Mr. Batten, would you support tomorrow's resolution on Russia?
Well, we never vote in favour of resolutions here, I'm afraid, because my party doesn't believe in the European Union. But having said that, the principle of the resolution, yes, we're in tune with that. And I think that, you know, Russia is, how can I say this politely? I can't. It's basically a gangster state. Putin is a gangster. It's run by gangsters. And it's actually getting worse. It's actually getting more authoritarian and more, you know, intolerant of political dissent. So certainly the sentiments behind it we would support.
Would you support Magnitsky Law to have the similar legislation as in the United States?
Yes, to stop people coming in to a country who've perpetrated human rights abuses and who are torturers and murderers, certainly. But that works both ways, because they want to stop Russians coming into America. There are lots of other people around the world who also do these things, who are welcome in America and Western countries. And we have people come from America, and perhaps some of those people have been torturing and you know, imprisoning people without trial in Guantanamo Bay. So I think the principle has to work both ways if it's going to mean anything.
Do you think that you would support Russians' idea to have Guantanamo list as a mirror measure to European legislation, American legislation, Magnitsky? Russians promised to have Guantanamo list.
I think what's gone on in Guantanamo Bay is an absolute scandal, and why the Russians are, you know, some of the worst offenders in the world, along with the communist Chinese, of human rights abuses. I'm not putting the Western world in any way in comparison with that. Still, wrong things happen in Western countries, and I think if you're going to have a principle, then you have to look. You know, you have to look at your own faults as well as your opponents and your political enemies. And I think what's happening in Russia is it's going back towards how things were under the Soviet Union. But under the Soviet Union, they were run by an ideology. The crimes were created in the name, or were actually perpetrated in the name of an ideology. Now you've got crimes being perpetrated simply because the government is made up of gangsters.
Mr. Batten, do you think European Union has a mechanism to influence Putin and Kremlin, or there is, as skeptics say, there is no such mechanism because it's too much of realpolitik there, because Europe is dependent on Russian gas?
Yeah, I don't think anybody takes the European Union seriously on the world stage. And as you rightly say, Europe is dependent upon Russian energy supplies, on gas. Other countries in the world will need their gas and their oil. And we've seen this in the UK. We've had David Cameron going to Moscow recently and sucking up to President Putin when the Russian state is murdering people on the streets of London. I knew Alexander Litvinenko reasonably well. He was murdered. That murder could not have been perpetrated without the cooperation of the Russian state. In fact, they were behind it. And now we have the disgraceful situation in the UK where the coroner cannot do his job properly in investigating the cause of death because information is being withheld by the security services. And this is simply because the British government doesn't want it admitted in a British court that the Russian state were behind that murder on the streets of Britain. And that's not the only murder that they've been behind. So they're trying to keep it quiet so they can continue cozying up to the Russians. And I think that you know, this whole dependency on foreign countries for energy reserves is something that is actually distorting our foreign policy and our morality.
Mr. Batten, so what's your verdict for the resolution? Don't you believe in its strength?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it will probably get voted through by the Parliament. My party cannot support resolutions in this place because we don't believe in the European Union. We think it's undemocratic and anti-democratic fundamentally, and therefore we don't support any move that comes out of here, legislation or resolutions or whatever. So we are here to use these positions as a platform for campaigning for Britain to leave the European Union. So while, as I say, we may support the principle behind something, in particular we cannot support particular resolutions or pieces of legislation or reports or anything else that comes out of the EU.
Don't you have any sympathy for political prisoners in Russia? For example, Pussy Riot girls got very serious penalties. They're basically imprisoned together with murderers for an administrative offence.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my best friends is Vladimir Bukovsky, who spent 12 years in Soviet labour camps and in mental asylums because he was a Soviet dissident. He was finally expelled in the 1970s. So I understand these people. I've done, I've given a lot of support where I can morally for democracy campaigners in China. I've spoken on their behalf. And I have tremendous respect for these people because they put their lives at risk just to try to achieve the things that we take for granted, which is, freedom of speech and democracy. So yes, I have tremendous sympathy for them, but I think that our own governments, our national governments, should be standing up for them. As I said, I don't think anyone takes the EU very seriously. They should be doing that individually, but also on an international basis by means of international cooperation. So, the good guys should actually say statements and try to put pressure on the bad guys, if I can make it as simple as that. And I don't think it should be done by the European Union.